Welcome to another episode of Roll or Die. We like to bring you the OGs on this show, and we have for you one of the most OGs that I know anyway. He's a pretty young guy, but he has been around the scene for a really long time. One of the stalwarts of Australian elite team, and proud to say he was one of the first coaches of my kids, Michael Tohme. Thanks for joining, Michael.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, definitely OG if you look at my hairline.
I can relate.
I don't know if my years quite reflect my hairline, but we'll see how we go.
Actually, it's not personal. Like Kim, I say rock star a lot, and no one says OG more than Kim. Okay.
Oh, really? Now I'm getting bored because you call everyone a powerhouse or a rock star.
Yeah.
So now, okay, I'm not allowed to call anyone an OG. That's just going to cut my vocab in half.
Michael is a powerhouse rock star OG. Let's just.
There you go. Yeah, I got the trifecta.
You have. You really have.
Brother, I usually see you when you're competing, man. You just always seem to be, doing the good. You're on the good shows, and you're always, getting about. People love to have you. You're an exciting match for people, man. How do you tell us about the competition stuff, man? Do you enjoy that?
Do I enjoy it? I like testing myself. If it wasn't in jiu-jitsu, it would probably be in something else. I compete in jiu-jitsu because I have a lot of love for my team. And I guess maybe because I'm one of the OGs or whatever, but I always wanted to set an example for the rest of my teammates. And Ninos, my coach, always kind of put me in a position as a leader in the team. So I took that pretty seriously, and it's kind of become habit more than anything else. Like if there was a competition, I'll be there with the boys, trying to set a good example on how to do it. Hopefully do it well. But even, on the days where you don't perform, at least you rock up and you represent, and not just myself or my team, but I think jiu-jitsu or the Australian elite team in general.
That's brilliant, man.
Yeah.
A brilliant approach.
No, that's awesome. And so tell us, like, there's times that you're saying then where you kind of don't want to compete, but you still do anyway. Is that what I'm hearing? Or
yeah, I mean, it's not so much like want to compete or not want to compete. Like we have like a running gag among some of the guys that I've been with for, like, say, the past 12, 13, 14 years, whatever it is. Like none of us probably would have had like jiu-jitsu as our first choice. I fell in love with the team on day one. I kind of saw the vision of the Australian elite team, what Ninos was trying to do, and I fell in love with that. I like playing video games and stuff like that. If I could have been good enough at those, I probably would have pursued that full time, but I think that's a harder barrier of entry to get to the top in that.
You're a little bit early. Like that's happening kind of now, you know what I mean? It's like
yeah. No, and honestly, like I enjoyed training. Like I don't dislike it, but I was never one of the guys who's like, oh, I love jiu-jitsu. I want to dedicate myself to jiu-jitsu. I think organically what happened was it was a bunch of guys and girls that we really loved our team. We loved hanging out. I would go there to socialize and be around people that I respected and I looked up to. And the byproduct of spending a lot of time together was that we ended up, doing all right in jiu-jitsu. And I think that happens pretty organically. If you're in a good place where you're happy, where you're nurtured, where you feel safe, and not just your physical health, but like they're concerned about your mental health, and your performance isn't indicative of how you're treated, you kind of end up just getting better as a result of being there day in, day out. And before I knew it, I was a black belt, and now it's like 10 years on as a black belt, and doesn't really feel like that long a time.
Wow.
Yeah, as a black belt. God, I feel really old now because I didn't think it was that. How long have you been doing jiu-jitsu? When did you start?
I started, I think, 2008, around then. Yeah, I was like 17. Turning 18. Yeah, so just on the end of high school. Trained a little bit inconsistently at the start, but then like after I graduated high school, I trained pretty much most days at AET. Like Ninos got me my first job there, like teaching like kids classes there, and I taught at a few other places, but predominantly I've been at AET for that whole time. Yeah.
So does that mean you
Wow.
like got your black belt within 4 years or something? Are you one of those?
That's how it's going to add up. Yeah.
Are you guys gonna
Now.
gonna report me to the IBJJF?
No, man. Like I'm the opposite. I'm going to get my
license?
black belt within 40 years, right? But
Yeah. I think in those days it was a little bit less strict about the time that you're on each belt. I think maybe about 5 years ish.
That's
Yeah,
amazing, man.
Yeah.
You're like Kit Dale.
Again, I think it was like,
yeah.
similar. I think in that situation, I think jiu-jitsu was a little bit different then as well. I don't know. Sometimes I go like some of the blue belts, they know more than I knew when I first got my black belt. It just feels like we kind of substituted technical knowledge for quote unquote having heart, and you just kind of would push through any situation. Yeah, no, cut sick, go harder. You know, those were the mantras of the day. And they served us well. Like I think we developed like thick skin competitively, or like I guess some of that school of hard knocks mindset definitely carries on now when I compete. You know, pushing through adversity and whatnot. But yeah, I think it was about 5 years to my black belt, and I was actively competing throughout. Like, I never didn't at least win my divisions in the belt at Pan-Pacs before moving on to the next belt. So usually I'd kind of do one Pan-Pacs as a belt, and then the next one I'd be the next belt. And then
it's great.
Yeah.
I'm jealous.
Oh, look, there's no disputing your standard. Like, I don't think however long it took you, like that's irrelevant really, because you were definitely dominating in those competitions. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Well,
how do you go
my
now?
thing for-
Sorry, I cut you off. Okay.
Yeah, no, I do okay. Yeah, I mean, we had the nationals a few weeks back, and I won my division. I felt pretty comfortable. I find with competition from the start, and maybe this is like a mindset that I got from my coach. I always felt like it didn't really matter if you weren't better than the guy that you were fighting at the start of the fight. The goal is to be better at the end of the fight. So I think having a good work ethic and taking the time in your role to see what they're willing to teach you about themselves and how to beat them. I think in most jiu-jitsu competitions, like my style is always, I'm a slow starter. I feel everyone out. And they're going to tell me what I need to do to be able to perform in that situation. And if I can learn as fast as they can teach me, I can do well. And if I'm a bit of a slow study on the day, maybe I don't perform. But I think that's the beautiful thing about jiu-jitsu, you know?
Okay, so let me just rephrase this, right? Because this is deep and no one's ever said this. So what you're saying to me is a match in a competition is a lesson. Okay.
And it should be, yeah.
Yeah. And the teacher is the person you're fighting. And the person you're fighting is, if you're a slow study and you can't do it in time, you're going to lose the match. But if you can learn the lesson in the time, no matter how slow you are, if you're better than them by the end of the match, you're going to win the match. And that's what matters.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, like my style of jiu-jitsu is I want to position myself to be able to learn from my opponent. So it means that the things that I'm offering them have to have some kind of feedback that I can learn from. So like, I mean, it's pretty apparent if you ever watch me compete. Like I play like a loop choke, leg up type of game. And I started playing with the loop choke because I felt like my dominant hand on someone's collar, I can learn a lot from them. I can learn from pushing, pulling, having a high grip, having a low grip, having contact or no contact with my actual knuckles. I'm information gathering just by my position. And then they're going to teach me what's going to be the effective way forward. I don't think you have any better teacher in life than your enemies. But in jiu-jitsu, you don't really think of them as enemies outside of that they're posing problems for you to solve. And that's the best learning experience. And it's just being open and receptive to it.
That's awesome, man. That's real cool. Do you need to get that?
No, it's all good. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So I guess what you're saying, like, are these the sort of things that are going through your mind before you compete? Because I mean, as someone that has competed at the highest level in Australia and done so well, it'd be remiss of me not to ask you about what your sort of psychological thoughts are, or what's your process before you compete? What goes through your mind?
Yeah, I try to be as pragmatic as possible. And what I mean by that is I don't get nerves from competition because I'm very rational about what I'm going and engaging in. Like this isn't a fight for my life. This isn't something with very dire outcomes either. It's something that I enjoy doing. And I coach my students or my training partners, and I simply say, like, sometimes nerves are justified, but even if they're not justified, they can be rationalized. If you're nervous, typically you're nervous if you're facing the unknown or if you're involved in something that you're not comfortable with. And in competition, you should be doing it because you enjoy doing it. And you know whether you're prepared or not. And if you feel like you're prepared, you can discredit those nerves that tell you, this is unknown, because it is known. I more or less know most of the moves. Sometimes someone will say a technique and I will go, yeah, sure. And I have no idea what they're talking about. But in the role, I more or less know most of what we're doing. And I think after 3 to 6 months of training, 90% of everything you're going to know technically. I mean, you haven't developed the sinew between your moves to connect them, but I mean, there's nothing that's going to be like, oh, I've never seen that before. So realizing that, I find it actually quite difficult to be nervous. But my approach for competition is, like I go, all right, if it's typically I do adults, I've been finding it harder and harder to find anyone at my weight in adults. So I've done masters once or twice now that I qualify for that. Thanks, Kim.
Now that he qualified, hey, we're way ahead of you in age.
Yeah. I'll see you in Masters 4, brother.
Yeah, please.
And then have to strap on a purple belt.
I don't think I made the cut. But yeah, like I look at how much time I have, and I try to break down that amount of time into like an information gathering stage, and then like a feeling out stage, and then like asserting my will after that, if possible. And I think my advantage in that is, like, I'm typically not the physically strongest guy in my divisions. So I never had the luxury when I was coming up in my training of asserting my will early on in a fight. Like I have pretty good puff. Like I've always been thrown around a little bit and I could always last the length of the fight. But because I could never like force anyone into a triangle or an armbar or anything, I needed to take the time to learn how they would let me win. And if someone's going to teach you that, like, you got to be patient. Not everyone. Some people hold on pretty tight to that kind of knowledge, but everyone's going to have tells or tendencies or preferences. And by learning those, usually by learning what people like about their game, they're going to teach you what you can exploit about it.
You are the first person who's ever talked about an opponent as a teacher. I'm very clear about that. I'm loving it. I love this whole analogy. I also love that it's not about the start of the fight. It's about the end of the fight. All this is gold for me, man.
Yeah.
A real gold.
Yeah.
So your gym, right? You had a gym and you don't have a gym. You passed the gym on. What was its lesson to you? What did it teach you?
I mean, I love teaching. I realized a few things through like raising my students, the students that I had and the time that I spent with them. I found like I personally don't really enjoy bothering with a technique too much when it comes to teaching. Like I like to give people a couple of tools in seeking out what they want, and my thinking behind where I put my hands or feet, my thinking behind like retention of guard or ways of pressuring. I have to teach technique as a coach. Like you kind of have to teach technique, whereas like now Nels has put me in a really good position where I can teach like a class, or I can make it more theory based and focus on what I want to do. But with my gym, with my students, I found coaching is, again, maybe this is just the way AT does it, but so little to do with the jiu-jitsu and so much to do with just the connections and the people. Like it's a very, very big emotional investment in that regard.
Right.
Yeah. And I loved every second of it. But what I found was I had a couple of students who were excellent, who I thought should do their own thing and be teaching, and just purely out of loyalty and dedication to me, they were sticking around and staying. And I made the decision, like, I mean, I'm still kind of in my heyday. I could do it all again if I wanted to, but like one of my students who I felt was very deserving, who's a little bit older than me, I felt like he could take over. He could do a really good job. And so now that's strapped down at M9A in Ravenhall, and he's doing a fabulous job.
Wow.
So I handed the gym over to him, I guess, when he got his black belt, like as a bit of a graduation present.
My God.
And then
Who gives
now
a
I get
black
to go
belt at a
there.
gym? That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I get to go there as just like a little bit of a debutante celebrity type of situation. It's kind of nice. But I mean, all of his students always treat me as their coach, and all of my students that I handed to him treated him as their coach. And it was just the relationship that we had in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a testament to the fact that he was a leader in the gym, supporting me, teaching whenever I was off competing, or and so like by rights, they were always treated like his own students, even when they weren't.
Wow.
So it just organically happened pretty comfortably.
This is amazing. That's awesome.
We've had
I try to go there as much as possible, just to support him and to continue the training. But yeah, it's really nice.
Brilliant.
We've had a few other AET guests on, and I've asked pretty much all of them this question, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts around what is it about the culture of AET? Can you tell us a little bit more about, I mean, you're obviously quite close with Ninos. I believe, you know, it's a lot of it just comes from him, yeah? But can you tell us what you think about it, and why is it so much that way?
Well, like, it's not to say that we slacked off in our training and then somehow found ourselves to be successful, because I know we definitely worked hard. I definitely never felt like I was working very hard under Ninos, because I think when from the start you're made to believe it's yours, from day one, he would always teach us like the reason I called it AET is because Australia is the country that we love. Elite is what we're aiming for, and team is it's yours. Like, it's not the Ninos Damo show, it's not the Michael Tohme show or anything like that. It's just for all of us. And from when we were white belts, we always felt like it was ours. And for that reason, I felt happy to put it on my back in the period of time where competition was, I guess, a little bit more vital to the success of the gym, and we really needed to perform to prove our medal, or, you know, to carve out our own corner in the jiu-jitsu community. You felt happy to put the whole weight of the team on your shoulders or on your back because it was yours. And then, yeah, like, I met Ninos. I was a young man. He was, young as well, but like in his 20s, had a young family, was like a pillar in his community already, a very respectful man and a very respected man. But he kind of was, for me, the blueprint of like the kind of guy I want to be when I grow up, the kind of dad I want to be around my kids, the kind of husband I want to be one day, you know, all of the kind of, you know, the quality of a person. And it just so happened that his jiu-jitsu was excellent, but I didn't know. Like, how are you going to know? You just rock up at the first gym that you rock up to.
Yeah.
I mean, even if they're not that good at jiu-jitsu, they're going to give you a hiding. Like when you're a 16, 17-year-old kid jumping into them, yeah, how are you going to know?
Yeah.
So I was lucky in that regard that, like, we stumbled on on a gold mine.
Yeah, a landmine.
Yeah, landmine. Yeah.
Some say landmine.
Like that. Like, whenever I get on his nerves and he wants to triangle me, then it's a landmine. But outside of that, yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then like, it wasn't like there was particular preferences or anything. He treated all of us like that, and it's really a wholesome environment where it didn't matter if you were doing well in competition. It made no difference to him. Like, he's so big on culture in that, like, if there's anyone bad mouthing anyone else in the gym, like if tomorrow I started talking about someone, he'd kick me out that day. Yeah. Like, he won't accept it from any of the guys, whether it's his best student or anything like that. He's like, you know, if we're going to say that we're a family and if we're going to live like that, we better live like it, you know. Like, he doesn't. And I think this is something that I tried to emulate with my students. It's actually a really gross quality that people use terms like that to market, where if you're not going to live like that, don't say it.
Don't call it a family.
Yeah. And like, what that means is, like, I mean, people don't know all the stuff behind closed doors that he does for us. And then you don't feel like an authentic person if you don't try to emulate that. You know, like, the amount of students that, you know, if they can't afford, he looks after them. So then when you have your own gym, you go, man, if when I was down on my luck, my coach was doing that for me, how could I not continue to do it?
Sure.
So now he's got X amount of affiliates under him, and the black belts have spread out across Australia. And I think a lot of us have carried that with us to some portion. And
That's brilliant.
yeah, it does all right.
Yeah.
That's great. And back to yours. Sorry.
Sorry, I'm going to jump in, Anton. Sorry, if you don't mind. I know we normally take it in terms of
Two
questions,
in a
but
row.
it just
Go
leads
for it,
exactly
Jiu.
on from that. You mentioned a lot about family, and I mean, your brother and sister both, when I was coming up, they were also very heavily involved in jiu-jitsu. Was that as a byproduct of AET? Like, did you start off and go home and like, hey, you got to come to this place, it's amazing? Or
yeah, so the way it started was first my older cousin George, he said, hey, like you're like a pipsqueak Mickey, you should come to jiu-jitsu. And so my brother was going anyway, and then like from the first day, George was like, oh, the coach in us, you have to be very respectful, he'll break you in half if you don't say it, if you step out of line. Like, he put like the fear into me. I was like, oh, all right, like what am I getting into? Like, I just played soccer for like 8 or 9 years growing up. Like I'm used to just like rolling around on the floor hoping to get a yellow card or something.
Pretending your legs blown up.
Yeah, just pretending I've been massacred. And then like I walked up, and like he just like, this guy else just ran. I was like, oh, Michael, I've heard so much about you. And he just gave me a big hug. And I was like, oh, what? That's not what I was expecting, you know? And then, yeah. And then my brother started training then. My mum was a bit reluctant because I was always a little bit delicate. So she didn't let me start training straight away. She thought I'd get hurt. And I moped around the house for a few months. And then eventually my mum said, all right, just to my brother, just take him with you just to get him out of the house. So I started training, with my older brother, started a little bit before me. And my cousins knew Ninos just through like their church community, because Ninos initially started the gym just out of the hall of the church. And then we moved to a few different places. So it was like we kind of knew each other, or we knew about the gym through family who knew about it just through their church community. And then, I got my sister in on it. Just, I thought it would be good for her. And it was good for her while she was doing it. But then, she stopped when she had her first child. And my brother, he's very busy, but he continues training. He's a brown belt now. And it's just a place where we go just because it's home, So even if we're busy, like, you make time for it.
Awesome. That's brilliant.
Sorry,
man.
Anton, go.
No, it's fine. I'm glad you asked that question. That was a good one. I was hoping to switch it back to your personal jiu-jitsu journey again, because like after you've been around for as long as you have, doing as long as you have, and you've come from this kind of poor harder style, and there's a lot of technical, like the white belts are also technical now with YouTube and everything else, let alone, other black belts, etc. What fascinates you about jiu-jitsu nowadays? What do you focus on? How do you keep evolving? What are you working on?
So like, as far as the way I train, like my goal since I got my black belt was just about stripping it back, like as much as possible, to not be married to anything. Like I found, maybe because I come up quick and I never got to settle on any of the belts that I was on. So like competing as a purple belt, I was the first purple belt in our team. Like my first competitions as a brown belt, I'd never touched a foot before. Like there was, I'm competing in a competition where people could go for submissions and I wasn't 100% around them. I think the first time I went for a knee bar was in a competition, I think Pampax as a black belt. It was the first time I went for one and I got it. But it was, really touch and go with that. And so I was really kind of committed to the techniques that had seen me through to have success in those kind of competitions leading up. And then like my goal since getting my black belt has been about stripping that back, and not to be married to any one idea or thing, and just to really be receptive to what my partner is, or the person I'm rolling with or training with or whatever, what they're offering me and what's available. What I've lended to in that regard is like, I get a lot of like loop chokes now. So a lot of triangles and arm bars and stuff still kind of happen organically. But when I play guard, I get a lot of loop chokes because I find that it's a position where I actually can learn a lot about my opponent and the way they move, and then it organically happens.
Yeah.
As far as my training goes, I think because I started off maybe a lot smaller than a lot of my training partners, and then I kept that mindset even when I filled out a little bit. I never, even though we trained very hard, I never was a very muscular fighter. I never had a lot of tension. Like my goal at the end of every session was like, I don't want to have more fatigue in any part of my body. Like,
Okay.
I make sure when I'm gripping that I never over grip. Like I make it a point at the end of class to check, have I overused this or overused that? And if I have, I make adjustments or modifications. Like with a lot of the guys, like I'll stop their roll if I see they've got veins in their hand. And I go, the guy wasn't even trying to break your grip. Like, why are we over gripping? And because of that, my body's been good. I've had a lot of longevity in the sport, relatively few injuries. So I've picked up a few. I think most of my injuries were kind of picked up before jiu-jitsu, or like not directly from jiu-jitsu, but that's I guess a part of life, part of growing old, or older. But I think because of that, because of my approach, I've had a lot of longevity in the sport. Like I don't feel physically worse than 10 years ago when I first got my black belt. I probably feel maybe a little bit better.
Right.
As far as what I'm working, really, like I think it's been a continual project, but it's just about like mindset behind why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm really never satisfied with if something works, I just inherently go cool. If I can't replicate it, or if I can't explain to myself why it works, I'm never going to be able to help my training partners exceed me. And that's been my goal, I think, at least for the past 4 or 5 years. It's for the next group of black belts to step on my head and then leap for the next level, you know? And for me to be a platform for them to do that, I've got to be the best I can be. So I need to be able to explain what I'm doing. I need to be able to break it down for people that are at all different types of technical levels. That kind of takes up most of my time.
Got it. So it's really about evolving your understanding so that you can pass on the knowledge. Like that's where you're at. You are embodying the teacher, basically. You've always been, obviously, but you're really taking that on now.
Yeah, but it's not as selfless as it sounds. I think that's just my way of promoting, like pushing myself further as well. I've always felt like the way I learn or the way I grow is I need to sharpen myself against the best possible like adversaries. And so you want to make your own. I think that's a good thing in jiu-jitsu. You can kind of create your own hard work, you know. And so by pouring myself into my teammates, I'm in turn creating people that will truly challenge me. So I don't hold anything back from the guys I work with. I teach them every single thing I'm doing, or I tell them what I'm thinking when I do it. And then I have to exceed that person, like the person that I try to create them to be. I have to exceed that to be able to improve myself. And that is an endless cycle in jiu-jitsu.
Love it. And it's the opposite of the way jiu-jitsu kind of used to be. So it's like,
I mean, I don't know. I've only ever trained under Nino, so I just know this, you know, like, and everyone at AT, we just got open hands. Like I never have had to pry a technique out of someone, or if someone catches you or something, they're super keen to tell you what they did or how they got it, or that's my experience of jiu-jitsu. So
my question, I think you've kind of already answered this, but you mentioned about how when you first started, you're a bit smaller and you know, you didn't have maybe the physicality behind you of what some of the others did. Would you have any advice for our listeners, for people in that same situation who are a bit smaller, who aren't the biggest physical specimens on the mat, about how they can survive, especially through, you know, those early white blue belt stage? It's terrible being smaller. And how do you get around it? Is it more than just the culture of your teammates? Like how do you survive that?
Yeah. So like if you've got people that are trying to like go out of their way to make an advantage, or like to put those kind of people in their place, it's not a great learning environment. I never experienced that. People are always pretty good to me. I mean, you've seen like Demi or whatever, like they put you through like a washing machine, mate. Like, and that's all good. Like, it's like, they're not trying to hurt you with subs or anything, but I didn't want people to hold their punches when it came to pressure passing or, stacking to, especially like if you're like myself, maybe a little bit more of a flexible guard player. If people aren't trying to physically stack or pass, I'm not really getting an authentic representation of what it's going to be like when things get difficult. But what I typically advise is like, I really try to set as small and controlled a goal as possible and work towards that goal. So like for me, what I found was, say, working guard, if they were a lot bigger and they were smash passing or just like kind of flipping me over my head, and I'd go, all right, the more movement I can create where my opponent doesn't have a chance to exert their strength on me, the better off I'm going to be in that situation. So what I would typically do would be like, all right, for today, I'm just going to set myself a 5-second rule, which means my feet cannot be on the same spot for 5 seconds. And then in the background, while I'm doing my training, that's my constant goal. And they don't have to be clever foot placements. They actually don't have to be better for me. As long as I'm getting in the habit of constantly moving, constantly changing my grips. Like in the gym, I count it as a big personal shame if anyone breaks a grip, but I never hold a grip tight. I have to be able to read if they're going to break a grip, and then I have to, of my own accord, move it to a better spot anyway. Because them going to break the grip is information for me that this grip is 1, compromised, or 2, could be better served doing something else. And by getting in that habit, you actually stop someone before they get started more often than not. And so like, I have a lot of people that kind of stand in front of me, not passing my guard. And they go, it's really frustrating because we know we shouldn't be standing in the pocket, but it's like, we can't get the first step. And it's because I'm just running my hands and I'm running my feet. And 90% of what I'm doing is wrong. I'm not making progress, but they don't have to know that. They don't know, you just create the confusion, and in amongst that confusion, you start to develop logical patterns or sequences of movement, foot placement, hand placement that are better, or that tend to have a better desired effect. And against each opponent, different foot placements or hand placements or grip combinations are going to have different effects. So I'm 1, stopping them from putting pressure on me. 2, I'm learning what's working against them. And 3, I'm starting to develop a pattern that I can use to exploit whatever they're doing defensively. And then just kind of organically, it happens that you've dealt with someone that's maybe a bit bigger or a bit stronger just through following that pattern. The worst thing you can do is go head to head. And I often see that in the smaller guys, that they get real defensive in that sense, and they try to like push through. Or I'm okay getting thrown around. Like my goal, if I'm playing chess, is to take the king's head. I don't care if I lose my queen and 2 bishops. Like it's all superfluous, like we have a very specific goal. You want to work towards that goal.
Man,
yeah, a little bit of what I'm thinking.
I'm coming down to train with you, bro. I'm super inspired by the stuff you're saying. Like seriously.
And you mentioned chess, so Anton is there
I'm
with
all
his
yours.
chessboard.
Yeah, seriously. I feel like I could learn a lot. I'm sure our listeners are going to feel like some of the stuff you're saying just makes so much sense. It's brand new stuff I've never heard in my entire life, man. So I'm
all of it makes sense, Anton. What are you talking about? It all makes sense. It's just mind-blowing.
Anton, as well. It's like I said it to Ninos once, like people like Ninos, like maybe there's Dimmy as well, like David Unan. Like I think they're like geniuses pretty much. They get stuff super quick, kind of they decide on something and it happens, technically or physically. Or I'm slow, man. Like I don't get stuff super quick. I don't
think so. If you got your black belt in a pretty short amount of time, that's
yeah. I mean, like I know within myself, I'm not quick to the punch. I take a long time to learn lessons. So I always want to be in a position where I can learn as much as possible against every person I train with. And like I train with some really tough guys. I've rolled, let's say, Thomas Messo 300 times this year. Let's say every single time he has to teach me what to do, every single time, because I'm still, after 15 years or whatever in jiu-jitsu, I'm not comfortable that I'm just going to be able to like dominate this person or assert my will or whatever. So every time I roll him, I go, what am I going to learn today? Maybe he's going to have a slight tendency towards one side. Maybe like he's got a bit of a Charlie horse in his right leg. And so through the patterns, I'm starting to notice that leg is starting to dip. And then maybe I'm going to dull heaver on that side to increase the pressure on that side. Like, I don't know. So I'll take the time to learn. Like, there's some people that are like geniuses in sport and they don't need to take this long. But I try to teach for everyone. And so when I teach my students, I go, I'm just going to assume that you're as slow as me and you need to take as long as me. So let's take the steps to learn how to win. Because someone's going to be willing to teach you, you know, like every role, they're going to be willing to teach you what's going to work and what's not going to work. But you got to be willing to learn. Like, and sometimes it's painstaking and sometimes it takes its time, but it's always going to benefit you in the long run.
Amazing.
And you're always going to benefit from, like, even if you don't win that round, but you're going to benefit from learning, like the muscular pathways, or like your muscle memory will develop learning from trying to perceive or keep an eye on what they're doing and learn from it.
Brilliant, man. We've got 1 minute 38 seconds left. Is there anything you want to say to pass on to anybody else? Anyone you want to thank other than us? But that's inherent.
Yeah.
But
thank you very much for having me on, guys. Yeah, like, I mean, you know, you want to come for a role, more than welcome, Anton, or anyone. Like, AET has always been very open and friendly. As far as people want to come and cross train, they don't need to leave their gym and swear servitude or anything like that. Just call us up, come down for a role. I think the nice thing about jiu-jitsu is that you make connections with people and like friendships that last a lifetime. I probably wouldn't be doing it if that wasn't the case, eh?
Awesome, man. Awesome.
No, fantastic. Well, thank you so much again, Michael. We'll have this out in a week or so. If you could share it, that would be fantastic. And
pleasure.
Look forward to seeing you soon, either at a competition or
I'll see
down
you guys
at
the
AET
campus,
headquarters.
The rockstar powerhouse OG Michael Tohme.
That's you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me, guys. See you.
You're welcome.
Thanks,
Bye.
Bye.